Hello, everyone. Welcome to Markets and Madness podcast. Thanks for joining us. If you are new to the channel, I would say please subscribe to the channel. Hit ring the bell so you get notified of any new notifications that come out, any new podcasts that come on. And if you like it, please do like. We do appreciate it. We're just trying to get this moving, getting this started. So with that, it's Tim and I today. Not a lot of economic news out there, but there are a lot of things going on in the world. Good morning, Tim. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's Fed Day, and that used to be a very important day, but now everybody's resigned to the fact that we're going to drop 25 basis points.
Right.
For the life of me, I can't see why. I mean, everything's buzzing along. The inflation target is fine, although we did get some economic numbers that were a little disturbing. Um, Industrial production was a bit of a jolt, but it's December, and we're moving from one administration to another, and I would suspect the caliber of information over the next few months is going to change. Um,
And was it consumer sentiment that came out yesterday that was negative? And it was surprising considering it was after the election that you should have seen a little bit of a bounce if people were really enthusiastic about the new administration.
well, I didn't follow it. It was that kind of a day. I had a lot to do,
Yeah.
uh, but as I look at this, I guess the conclusions I'm coming to are we're the beneficiary or the recipient of capital flows as governments around the world look shaky. Um, that said, we had an ugly auction. I think it was a 30-year auction or 20-year auction. It didn't go well, which sort of flies in the face of incoming capital flows. But so much money is going into equities and these stocks. Talk about if euphoria. This is really euphoric, and there's good reasons for it. I mean, it kind of reminds me so much of when the Reagan administration took over. We had
Right.
trouble for a few months, um, I guess a good 6 months. The unemployment rate went up. We were in a very high interest rate environment as Volcker was trying to tame inflation. Um, but they built a legacy basically for over a decade for strong economic growth. The tax cuts did it. They weren't moved out, I guess, from 82 to 87. We had really strong tax cuts. Then things started to fall apart after the crash of 87. And not to give a history lesson here, but if you research those years, you'll see exactly what happens to markets when we make big changes to the tax code. So there's some long lasting, really solid events going on now. So if you're somebody thinking over a 10-year time frame, this couldn't be a better environment.
Yeah, it's a great market for investors and for traders. I think it's beware.
It's
You
just a
know.
lot of froth. It's
Yeah.
just very frothy,
Yeah.
you know.
Um, you
Sentiment
know,
guys are very negative.
sentiment guys. That's what I was just going to say. There's a lot of reasons for the sentiment guys to say this is way overextended. But how do you fade it? Do you fade it through options? Do you buy you buy short-term puts? Do you sell
Well,
upside
that's
calls?
exactly what I'm doing. I'm buying short-term puts. They expire in February, March, you know,
Hmm.
and I could live with them and get out of them beforehand. But I've kept the core positions.
Yeah.
Um, I like quantum computing. I think quantum is really going to overtake AI. Somebody said to me that the power demands for AI are such that it just can't go on for long, whereas quantum computing is a whole other animal. So I think that's your long-term structural good position, and plus the sell the oil and gas product and buy the drillers and shippers.
Do you think there's opportunities here to invest in 10-year bonds or longer? You,
No.
you still think the back end goes up?
Oh, is that what you mean from a yield curve standpoint?
Yeah.
Um, we're doing a
If you're
lot
a
of.
longer term investor, I noticed your feeling is the stock market's going to get better over time. But do you think the bond market's going to be a good place to invest?
Well, inflation. We're going to have to fight inflation. There's
Hmm.
no doubt about it. And that question, really is one you should ask Musk and Vivek whether or not they're going to make some progress on the debt. Progress on the debt structurally is really a good thing, even though over the short term it means unemployment and a lot of reorganization and sector rotation within the economy.
I read something yesterday, the day before, that Biden is putting something in that he's putting a 5-year window on not having a 40-hour work week or something crazy like that.
I,
So, or no, or not forcing people back into government employees back into the office within 5 years.
well, he's trying to do something for the unions, yeah,
Yeah,
on his way out. And I think the bigger issue is this funding proposal that the House just put in. It's all kinds of spending, and Musk is saying the bill shouldn't pass. But if it
right.
doesn't pass, we run out of money Friday, right? So we're back to that again. You know, I don't know how much longer these budget standoffs are gonna. We come and go and just pass a spending resolution, and they just spend and kick the can down the road for another 6 months or 1 year, the case may be.
Hmm.
You got to face this. They got to keep the government open, I guess. So Johnson is doing whatever he has to do to keep the government open. He's got such a poor majority. I mean, he
Really
virtually
does.
has no majority at all.
Yeah, California just finished voting, right? It was a month late. They were still tabulating ballots,
Yeah.
and some seats swung back and forth.
Did you happen to see the governor yesterday saying that we've been doing Doge for years? What's the big deal with that?
Yes,
I mean, what color is the sky where
right.
this guy lives? You know, I got to really wonder.
Yeah, I did see that, and I thought it was.
I mean, we need this huge reality check. I mean, and that's I think the good part of the way we used to operate in the markets. I was taking a trip down memory lane, thinking about Jerry and the dog. You remember that story?
Yes, yeah. Why don't you share that one? Go ahead.
Jerry was a bit of a playboy, British accent, good-looking guy. Goes out on town one Wednesday night, runs into this lady, ends up at her place. And the next morning, she wakes up and says, "Look, I'll make us breakfast, but first I got to walk the dog." And Jerry, being a kind-hearted soul, says, "Well, you make the breakfast, I'll walk the dog." So he takes the dog out, and he's walking the dog, walking around, enjoying the morning, taking a deep breath.
It was like Battery Park or something like that, right? Buildings
Yeah, it
moving
was one of
up.
these big apartment complexes. I don't know where it was. Might have been Battery Park. And he looks around and realizes that he doesn't know what apartment he came out of. And he says to the dog, "Okay, take us home." And the dog looks at him and goes, "What, are you kidding me?" So Jerry's in his t-shirt and his suit pants. So he's got a pair of shoes on. So he thinks, well, I might as well go to the office. So we come into the office and there's Jerry sitting there in his chair with the dog chained to him in his t-shirt. "Jerry, what's the deal?" And he explains what happened. He doesn't know her name, has no idea where he was, knows the general vicinity. She doesn't know his name. She's calling the bar. The bartender doesn't come in till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. She doesn't reach him until then. Finally
This guy
tracks down.
stole my dog. Yeah,
Unbelievable.
yeah. Only in the FX markets.
Just a
Yeah.
regular Wednesday afternoon. It
That's
was
right.
actually the euro deposit market, actually.
Was
Wasn't
it?
quite the FX market. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man,
So, I
those were
mean, we
great
live in
times.
those days, I mean, every day I look at that and I think of how strange life was then, and it's equally strange now. We got UFOs flying all over the place. They ask Trump, have you been briefed on this? Trump says, "I don't want to answer that question." So he was briefed and he can't talk about it. So they know what these things are.
Of course,
Yeah.
I've been saying for the last 2 weeks, Elon has more things in the sky than anyone. If he's not concerned about this, then why should we? He knows what's going on. He's got it. It's under control. I'm sure he's monitoring every step of what's going on.
Well, they don't have any authority yet. They can't even,
Yeah,
they
but
can't even
he
speak.
could answer if there was a concern, if there was something that public safety was a concern. I think he would. He's not shy about opening his mouth
Well, let me
when the
ask you
time
this:
comes.
is spying public safety? I mean,
The most logical thing that I heard was the Nuclear Regulatory Commission or something said that a uranium container was delivered to the port in New Jersey, and they couldn't find the uranium. It was tampered with.
yeah, it was
So
medical uranium, I think.
was it medical? And that's what the rumor was. That's what these drones are looking for.
Yeah.
So they're flying around looking for heat signatures or uranium signatures or whatever, and going in a grid pattern,
Well,
which
I'm a little worried about that, you know.
yeah.
But that's me. I'm in Florida. What do I care?
Well, people were reaching out yesterday in Cleveland. It's around. I guess if they did lose it and they didn't find it in New Jersey, we're not seeing many more. Last week, the week before, for the last couple of weeks, there were a lot overhead. I probably saw 5 or 6 of them above my house on any given night. Driving over the Outer Bridge, if you're in the New York, New Jersey area, we see all over. We're all over the place.
Okay,
And
well, let's get back to the market. There's not a lot here. People are waiting on the Fed. It's not the rate cut that's going to be on their mind. It's what he says after the rate cut.
right,
But
next step. Yeah.
the Fed has been bypassed. The Fed is basically superfluous, the way I can see it. In a
This
stable
Fed,
market, we
yeah,
look at these short-term rates, but there are too many big events occurring in
this
these
this
markets.
Fed certainly has been a follower and not a leader. They let the
Yeah.
market take the hand and show them where to go, and then once everything is in place, then they'll move. So
Yeah.
they have not been. It's not the Greenspan Fed.
But justify to me why we should lower rates 25 basis points, because
Yeah.
I don't see that.
And it's interesting because we had Steve on a couple of weeks ago, and he was, let's get it over with, lower it, lower it, lower it, right? So,
Yeah, I was wondering. In fact, I asked him that question. I said,
yeah.
"Can you justify lower rates?" And he did. I just don't see it. You know, I guess I grew up when stable rates meant 4.5, 5.5%. You know,
Hmm.
there's over this last post-COVID and I guess post 2000, excuse me, 2008 crash, we've become accustomed to the fact that zero interest rates are the norm. And maybe I'm just too old a dinosaur to accept that. When you got inflation pushing and you don't believe the inflation numbers and the price is there and we got this level of debt outstanding, I don't see any reason why the Fed should be accommodative to this. But
Hmm.
that's me.
Yeah, and
Anyway,
then the next question is, as you say, but more importantly than if we get to 25, is what their comments are going forward.
there's just too many huge variables that overpower short-term interest rates here.
Hmm.
We're talking about major, I guess, generational structural changes to the economy in terms of addressing debt, in terms of cutting, moving from the federal sector to the private sector, tax cuts, trade policy. There's so many huge factors, variables here that I think they overlook the short-term rates. I mean, if you look at the currency markets this way, assuming everything is stable, the interest rates, short-term interest rates, driven by the local central banks, represent kind of the way dividends mean to stocks. In a stable environment, you're holding a stock with a dividend. So you got a currency that's earning you 3%, 2%, and you measure that against the inflation rate and you see if it's stable or it should be adjusted. But we're not in that environment anymore. We were in a stable rate environment. The Fed took rates up to the point where it had to be addressed, inflation had to be addressed. And now, even though he hasn't met his target, he's pitching ahead and saying, well, inflation's coming down. That stopped. The progress on inflation has stopped, yet he hasn't stopped lowering rates. To me, the Fed's got to justify why. And I think the market will take the curve up a little bit and ignore the Fed and take the 10-year a little higher.
Well, they certainly have over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So that said, I think the bigger events are the shakeups in the global governments around the world. We got 5 or 6 governments here that's looking at big shakes. You know, the prototype to all of this was the guy in Argentina. he showed us what could be done and what's possible. And, he's a big advocate for Trump. And Trump has been talking that game for a long time. So now we're going to see it. So let's look at Argentina as the prototype.
Yeah, they've gotten inflation down,
Yeah.
back on track, and it's a little over a year, probably 18 months. They were able to solve that problem.
Yeah.
And it was a long problem, It was,
And I was
huge
there.
inflation numbers.
I mean, these people that said, I got to admit, we had to do something, and we did it. And I guess this election is kind of saying that the electorate feels we've got to do something too. Maybe we're finally waking up to the fact that the debt is just not sustainable long term. After hearing it for 15 years.
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts on this Wednesday.
Yeah, and we brought it up, I guess it was last week, the idea of anti-woke. And I saw some comments the other day outside of the financial markets, but someone was asking about why NBA viewership is so down. And I said, because they've gone too woke. So you even have it in the sports realm,
Yeah.
where,
And I guess the next piece of that is going to be trans athletes in female sports. That's going to bubble up too.
I saw a clip where they were interviewing, I don't know if it was a House panel, it might have been, the head of the NCAA asking how many student athletes are there. And he said there's over, I don't know, 10,000 or 20,000, some crazy number like that. How many are trans? And he said like 8 or 10.
Yeah.
He says, okay.
The tail is wagging the dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Everybody's afraid to say the emperor has no clothes,
Okay, well, there's not a lot more to say. So
Yep.
let's
All
give our
right.
viewers
Well,
break
have a
and-
great afternoon. And
Okay.
once again, if you like what you hear, please subscribe and help us grow the channel.
Yeah, let me
Thank you
say a
very
word
much.
on that before we go off.
Yep.
If you're looking at this podcast, recognize that when people talk and say things they're going to do, that's one thing. But when they put their money in a place, that justifies their actions. Probably one of the smartest guys I ever met in this market was an Asian economist named Sam Nakagama. Sam was a brilliant, brilliant guy. And he made a lot of interest rate projections based on how he viewed the geopolitical world. He would look at the world as advisors and say, I see this event, I see this event. And because of that, I've come to the conclusion that the markets are going to follow. And I'm a big believer in people, money talks and bullshit walks. And when people put their money in a place, they're telling you really what they think and what's going to happen. And money's flowing into these capital markets and these equity markets as a believer. And we've seen this book before, and it's happening again. So this podcast is about observations from two guys that have seen it for front row advisors for 40 years or so. I think it was King Solomon that said there's nothing new under the sun. And that's probably true. The same problems were here 3,000 years ago. We just found better ways, technological ways to approach them. And we're sort of observers of that, only because we've seen it so many times from so many different perspectives. So if you think that's something that appeals to you, by all means subscribe. We'd like to get the subscriptions up and maybe attract some people.
Yeah, and what I'd like to do at some point in the future is start to do 1 or 2 live events and have some, question and answer. If somebody's, people have some comments, they want to, reach out to us. I think that would be very helpful. So,
Okay. Thanks a lot.
thanks, Tim.
Talk to you
Take
soon.
care. Bye.